So welcome back to the meet the board here, and with me first, I'm proud to say that I have, as you can see, Professor Tima Bansal at the Ivey SOB in Canada, but also the founder of NBS, Network for Business Sustainability. And I'm super happy to have you here, Tima, also in your capacity as the Vice Chair of the PRME Board, of course, over the past 2 years. And those of you, and I assume that's about 99% of you, will know Tima and will know of his stellar research. And I can just tell you, Tima, that I've been traveling a little bit recently, and everywhere I go and I meet, young female scholars, you are such a role model. So thank you for being here for us today also, and with us, talk a little bit about your sort of role and why you decided to actually spend quite some time here, not just in the 3 board meetings, but also in between with me and with the team on PRME work.
Well, I think that the first obvious answer is I think PRME's mission really aligns with who I am and where I think the world should be. So the idea that management education has to be responsible is clear. And I think the problems that we face right now, Meta, are so significant and so potentially catastrophic that business should be seen, and not just seen, must be at the front end of that change to make the world better. So I believe in what we do, and I believe education is a mechanism to do that. 2, I think that PRME has just really ramped up. And there's no question that in the last 2 years, especially since you stepped up, Meta, that there has been just an injection of energy. And I believe that nothing will stop us. UN PRME will be the leader in a lot of the changes that we're going to see. And that comes from the $5 million I-5 Lego grant. That comes from the $1 million Economics of Mutuality grant to build a platform. That comes from the working groups. That comes from the chapters. There's just so much opportunity right in front of us, Meta. Never have I seen this before. So I'm excited.
No, thank you so much for your support here. I'm super excited too, as you know. So I agree with you. What do you sort of see? You've been following the discussions now for a couple of years, and also based on your own expertise, traveling a lot in the field, also your role in the governance of the Academy of Management. What do you see as the main challenge that you're hoping to address, in relation to global leadership education?
If those of you who are here to watch the video, I think that right now, a lot of leadership education on responsibility, sustainability, ethics, stakeholders, whatever you call it, is still sidelined. It's still part of how we see the world. We need to make it central to everything that we learn in business education. So what I think is the biggest challenge, the biggest opportunity, is for us to embed that type of thinking in every single course. And so whether you're talking about finance, it's not just finance to make money, it's finance that allows one to create value by also contributing to a better society. Whether it's operations, it's not just about creating lean operations that reduces the costs and number of people in the organization. It's also about just allowing for value to be created so that we have a much better working environment. And so operations, strategy, finance, every part of business should have sustainability responsibility at the heart of it. That's where I think we need to go.
Do you think that there are sort of in also reading your own work, that there are differences between sustainability and sustainability? In terms of, I sort of remember, let's say 10 years ago, we were thinking the more courses, the better, on sustainability. Could you reflect a little bit with me on this?
So I think, so are you saying, is it better to have a single course or to have it throughout all courses?
No, I'm more sort of thinking, and again, I'm sort of thinking back to some of the talks that I've heard you do, and some of your own writings about, what kind of sustainable development is it that we're aiming for? Because we know that, you can teach sustainability within the old paradigm, if you like, the growth, the green growth sort of paradigm, or you can teach it in other ways that maybe has to do with post-growth thinking, which is quite different.
So I have a specific perspective on this. I don't think that we can change the direction of the world. I think that our world is very much based on markets and on growth. So we have this notion of progress and growth sort of related to each other. So to ask for degrowth is to ask us to deny what is at the heart of the institutions that we've built. What I think that we need to do is to change our perspective so that we stop seeing profitability as the objective. We start to apply systems thinking, that we start to see ourselves within a larger system. So then our goal is societal prosperity or flourishing or something that's bigger. And then we say, what is our role within that bigger aim? And once you see that ourselves within a larger system, and you see the interactions of the system, it changes your perspective altogether. So then every time you innovate something, for example, you need new packaging for food. Do you innovate plastics, recognizing that the accumulation of plastics in a bigger global world is a problem? No, then you think about packaging that will actually work within the larger system. That means maybe you use a different type of packaging. Maybe you don't even think about packaging in the same way. And so as soon as you start to see yourself as part of a larger system, then you start to really think about the problems in a very different way. And I think that we can do that. And I'm going to give you an example. I don't want to take up too much time with this, but I teach a case study with my finance colleague. And what we do is say it's a firm that wants to acquire a mine. It happens to be a coal mine. But once we say extend the time frames of the acquisition from just a few years, 5 years, to the length or period of the time mine, 25, 30 years, the whole economics changes, because then you have to think about remediation, you have to think about social movements, you have to think about even the quality of the coal that comes out of the mine, right? So you extend the time frames, you think about society, and then you have a very different answer. That's what we need to do in business schools. We have to get students to see themselves as part of a larger system, not just about themselves as being leaders, or not just part of an organization that wants to make more money.
Yeah, no, thank you, Tima, for this. Thank you for this amazing sort of reflection about, the sustainability and what we actually bring into the classroom. Sometimes the board can seem very far away from, an everyday practice. If you're working in a school and there's a board somewhere in the air. So this is also why I think it was a great idea to bring, you as a board member onto to the conversation here. So maybe I can ask you a last question, and that is, how would you sort of, you've been working here on the board for a couple of years. How would you summarize the strategic vision of the future of Prime?
Well, I think that we have an opportunity in our board to get a collective vision. So it's not just about Tima's vision, it's about our vision. But since we haven't had that opportunity yet, partly because of COVID, so we're meeting virtually, and we're looking forward to our first in-person meeting in October. But if I was to say what my vision is that management education becomes central in every single business school, but central to business education. That's what I think Prime can do. I'm confident that Prime can increase the capability set of all professors. It can increase the knowledge that's available in these various disciplines, but then also really motivate students to do something really good in the world. So it's quite inspiring what the future brings through Prime.
Thank you, Tima. Thank you so much for this speed dating here with a board member. I loved it, and I thought it was fabulous to see you here again. And
Matt, I just have to say, it's such a pleasure to work with you and the group at Prime. So it's really my privilege and honor.
Thank you. So we are moving on to the next Prime board member here for a little conversation, and I believe that I have John Goodwin here. Is that correct?
To transform research business schools into impact business schools
is to help equip higher education institutions all around the globe with the capabilities, content, and the inspiration they need to produce a new breed of responsible manager for the future. These future leaders will need to be equipped with both the knowledge, but also the skills.
The priority of Prime over the next 15 years is to ensure we do absolutely everything we can to support sustainable development and climate action. We must work together to deliver current, relevant, meaningful and experiential education, ensuring our graduates are ready to face the enormous crises and innovative opportunities that will be presented.
We educate future leaders on sustainable development through the knowledge and research we produce and academic programs we develop with a sense of purpose, the first principle of Prime. Only through our cooperation and partnership we'll be able to guarantee a better life on our planet for those who inhabit it, promoting sustainable economic growth where no one is left behind.
Hey, John, there you were. Wonderful to see you, and wonderful to also welcome you here as a Prime board member, but also, of course, in your capacity as the Prime I5 Advisory Board Chairman, which you have generously volunteered to spend some time with us over, actually quite some time with us over the next coming years here, directing us, steering the huge project, very exciting project with a large group of people around you, and also some great people that you actually brought to us who can help us work with pedagogical innovation. But you are also the Lego House Advisory Board, and you're former CEO Lego Foundation. So you have a lot of hats to wear here, and I'm super excited to have you in the room here just for a few minutes to hear your reflections on what brought you to work with us in Prime. Thank you.
Well, Mette, it's in much the same way as Tima was mentioning. It's an absolute privilege to have the opportunity to interact with you and the team at Prime. I'm a strong believer that education is the foundation of societal advancement. And given the complexity of the problems that we face at this point in time, I think Prime is in an amazingly strong position to be able to influence the development of future leaders and contribute towards this decade of delivery for the Sustainable Development Goals. So it's just fantastic to have the opportunity to work alongside such influential and great committed people at Prime and on the board and across all the Prime membership.
So thank you, John, for these words, and I think it's amazing to have someone like you on the board with your competence, with your expertise, and also I think that my friends out there in the audience would like to know a little bit about your background, because you bring sort of expertise from the learning community, from a global learning community, but very much focused on adolescents and children. So how does that sort of resonate with what we are doing in Prime?
Yeah, well, actually, whilst the last decade or so, I've been working within the Lego ecosystem, and specifically in the last 5 years working as the CEO of the Lego Foundation, really focused at children's development through the power of pedagogical and parenting interventions. I would say that I'm also excited to combine that experience with my business experience of the near 30 years prior to that, where working with in the branding and consumer space, understand the power of communication and how that can change and influence people. So combining those two, I'm hopeful that I can contribute to the important vision and agenda of Prime to think about how to nudge and help the system to innovate for the future and for greater impact. And I think there's a lot of learnings to be had from the younger education space around both the learning science that has evolved over the course of the last 15 years around how the brain develops and what is the richest environment for learning, and how to transpose that across into the higher education and adult landscape. Because whilst the brain's at a different stage of its development at that point in time, a lot of the fundamental characteristics of how we as humans engage in the subject matter and take it on board and internalize it, I believe, remain consistent throughout the whole of our lives. So I'm keen to find a way in which we can bring the knowledge and science to bear and really innovate together to have a greater impact.
Yes, I think but thank you for these wonderful remarks, John. I really agree with you, and I really think that that's learnings that of the research that has been done also in the context of children is something that we of course need to translate, and that's what we're doing, and sort of adding that to the already lot of management research on education and learning that has been going on to see how we could thrive and how we could benefit from that in a prime context. So I'm super excited about that. I also would like you to reflect a little bit about, your sort of perspectives on the strategic vision for Prime. How would you summarize the strategic vision for Prime? I asked Tima the same, so now I'll check up if you agree.
Well, like Tima, I'm looking forward to the opportunity of getting together face to face with my fellow board members, who are a wonderful group of individuals, in order to co-create, because that's really where the breakthroughs occur. But along that vein, I believe that the vision should be grounded upon my firm belief that we should be entering into an era of collaboration and coherence for impact. Collaboration in the context of really breaking down some of the traditional silos and barriers that we've artificially inserted in our own minds that prevent us from thinking in a coherent manner. Tima phrased it as systems thinking, but I used the phrase coherence as a means of, at the point of decision making, truly reflecting on the wider aspect of the consequences of this decision and how it's going to affect more things than just the bottom line, but also the wider societal impacts and the consequences of that, and making sure those trade-offs are considered at the point of decision making. So that coherence thinking, I think, is really important. And as we in the business school education sphere really engage students, I think it's critical that we step out of the pure functional lens and start to think with a broader lens. And with that, ultimately for impact. And that's what I'm saying. I think the vision should be geared towards what's the ultimate impact that we're looking to achieve. And as you know, I'm a firm committer in keeping that ultimate goal of having leaders and responsible managers emerging out of business schools with the tools that they need, both knowledge and the skills, to be able to influence the environments that they find themselves in for a greater impact for the world and a positive contribution. But
thank you so much for these amazing reflections, John. I think that is wonderful to hear this. I would love to ask you a final question. It's a little bit of a personal question because, I happen to know that you were trained as a finance professional, and also that you have worked as a chief of finance in, for example, the Lego Group, but also, as I recall, in Unilever before that, etc. So I would love to hear about your journey from finance to, the conversation we're having today.
Yeah, well, I will have to correct you.
I'm not asking for a 20.
It was Procter & Gamble as opposed to Unilever. So, but given I have fellow Unilevers members on the board, I won't get into the difference. Yeah, it's been a fascinating transition. I think Andrew Carnegie said it's more difficult to give money away intelligently than it is to earn it in the first place. And having gone from a situation where I was the CFO of the Lego Group to then being the CEO of the Lego Foundation, I could definitely subscribe to that because there's a huge amount of wider accountability to how you use the financial resources in order to drive change versus the accumulation of them. And I would say my time at the Lego Group really helped broaden my understanding of those wider societal impacts and consequences of your decision making, such that value creation needs to be defined much more broadly than simple bottom line. And I know Alec Worsom put the question around GDP as to whether or not, why are we not moving away from GDP as being the primary societal measure of how a country performs? And I think it's a really valuable question to explore, and the opportunity to find different measures of measurement is really an important aspect, and that's something that hopefully we can turn our attention to in Prime.
And thank you for this wonderful closing remark, John, because I think that is exactly part of the journey we're on, how we can sort of surface some of those skill sets that we need to be better at training for our students and for ourselves as faculty. But how can we actually develop a vocabulary, develop some frameworks, and even some methods for assessing that part of the journey for our students. So thank you so much, John, for being here today, but also for, being there for the Prime I5 Advisory Board and from the Prime Board. Thank you.
Civic education is a driving force to create impact on societies. Emerging countries need responsible management education. To achieve sustainable development goals, social responsibility should be the core to the education.
Reversing the devastating effects of climate change and getting to a zero carbon world is the most important priority that the world faces today. Business will lead the way, and we need to educate those business leaders for the future. UN Prime is the vehicle to help us mainstream education about reversing the effects of climate change and reaching a sustainable world.
One, you're joining a community that is discussing and championing the biggest issues we face on this planet today. Number two, it's a great opportunity to get best practice ideas in championing the SDGs. And thirdly, you're showing your students in your teaching the way forward and not emphasizing on business being about making money, but giving more to society and our planet that you receive.
You will collaborate with experienced and dedicated colleagues from all around the world. You can benefit from the outstanding expertise of leading universities. And finally, we need to join forces to address the social and environmental challenges of our future today. We need you to create a sustainable tomorrow for all of us.
And now it is my pleasure to welcome you, Enase Okonedo, Vice-Chancellor at the Pan-Atlantic University, and before that, the Dean of Lagos Business School in Nigeria. And of course, also a Prime board member for the past 2 years, and helpful in, a number of respects for the work that we do within Prime. And I'm super happy to have you here, and your excellence and the expertise, your views of the world. I've learned a lot from you already over the past years here, listening to you and seeing how you navigate from your perspective, and you're putting your perspective on the work that we do and the work we need to do more of in Prime. So very warm welcome to you, Enase.
Thank you, Matthew.
I would like to start by asking you, about, again, like I have asked Tima, I've asked John, why is it that you decided, because I know you have a very, very busy calendar, but then again, you decided actually to accept our invitation to be part of the work of the Prime board. And what was part of your thinking or your reflections when you made that very, very good decision?
Thank you, Matt. For me, it was a privilege to join the Prime board for a number of reasons. One, at Lagos Business School, where I'd been dean for a couple of years, we had always been very focused on the whole idea of responsible management and developing people. And we had started to see the impact. I mean, the impact was real in our respective community, in our community. Nevertheless, we knew that for our students to make a difference, to go out, there has to be broader impact. In other words, it's not only what we did at Lagos Business School, other schools have to be teaching students the same thing, just so that we can create a better world that's more impactful. And Prime, joining Prime, first of all, there was an alignment of objectives. And secondly, it gave me the chance to say, let me work with others to see whether we can spread this message globally, and then work to see how we can transform management education globally, just so that the whole world can benefit from what it was that we had already seen start to happen in our own climate. So it was just a natural fit, if I may.
But thank you for these quotes and these introductory remarks here. I really appreciate to hear it, and I also want to thank you for you've actually been, very sort of key and central for the new Prime Chapter Africa that we decided to establish. We sort of made all the movements last year, and then we finally firmly established the new Prime Chapter Africa this year. And of course, that also gave sort of on the big continent that you live in, sort of gives a new prominence and a new perspective for us to learn from what is going on the African continent in many ways. And I would like to ask you how you sort of, if you think that there are particular sort of insights, particular things that you would like to bring onto the board from your perspective, what you sort of think that you hope the direction that we will be pushing a little bit more into the future.
I like the direction that we're pushing in so far. I like the whole idea of just trying to establish regional chapters in underrepresented regions. I think that that's a fantastic step. Now, within these regions, then we have to think about what agenda we need to, like you say, push a bit more. And I think that in a number of underrepresented regions, that the stage of development of management education is not as high or not as, as fast as has happened in other places. I think that the role of schools within that region has to be how we can strengthen institutions. And I think that that's, the bane, if I may, of a lot of developing countries. And the students that we graduate and the leaders that we graduate have to be able to go out there. When, I mean, the countries or, continents are only as strong as how the institutions that are there. And so when we talk about responsible management, it can't exist in a vacuum. In order to support what it is that we do, we need to ensure that we have strong institutions. We need to ensure that issues such as ethics and then the responsible management, we always come up with this, we're still developing, we need to do that. And sometimes the responsible aspect of the things that we do is sidelined only because the issues of survival and profit maximization. And therefore, I would like to see Prime push a bit more to see how we can bring this to the agenda in the forefront in these various regions.
So what would sort of be your sort of strongest recommendation to Prime for how to do that actually?
I think it starts from research. And I like what it is that we're doing. So I think that if we can foster the cross-disciplinary research across things as well to look at the things that, so, we need to research and say, hey, this is what's going on in others. But then, we're at different stages there because now, I think that's globally, that's not limited to Africa. Sometimes the research occurs in silos. We're researching finance, we're researching marketing, we're researching this. But then when we talk about it, it is a holistic picture. And if we can foster the cross-disciplinary research, then we know, okay, so these are the issues. And then the next thing is what are the frameworks that we're going to establish in order to educate our students to function in this respect. So I think that Prime has the work cut out, quite frankly.
No, but thank you for this wonderful response and this sort of reflection about not just from an individual school perspective, but more general what it is that we need to do collectively to engage and to further our work. I know that you've also, we had discussions about, what is it that we can do with our faculty to actually help advance the faculty and help them in their work, because for many of our colleagues, this will be not something that we were educated, we were not trained to teach sustainable development or responsible management, something that came later to the curriculum or to the expectations to us as professors. And how do you sort of see this development and the largest sort of responsibility here for us as educators?
Okay, so I'll perhaps draw on an example of what we did at Lagos Business School several years ago. We joined Prime in 2011. And at that time, I think that the whole idea of responsible management, we had been teaching it at the school since. Sustainability was pretty new. And therefore, in 2012 and 2013, over a period of 2 years, we actually convened faculty seminars that was just aimed at educating faculty as to what responsible management means and how across each individual discipline it had to come in. So the whole idea of saying, let's teach sustainability here, let's teach that, and here I'm teaching finance, we had to make that connection to let people see that, there is a connection between everything, and within your own space, you need to have that happen. So that was one thing that we did, and I found it extremely useful. I think my faculty did as well. We went a step further and said, for each course that you're teaching, 10% of the cases that you use must cover an aspect of responsible management in your respective fields. That's where we were able to bring it to life. And it wasn't a question of, no, this is finance, this is marketing, this is operations. It had to come in here. Now, if we can do that, I think, and if we can encourage people to do that and learn from one another, I think that one of the advantages that we have at Prime is that, we have, if I may use the word, a network. And through the SIPs, the sharing information of progress reports that we have, there's a veritable mine of information about best practices across schools that we can learn from. And it's to encourage faculty to not just, sometimes the institution submits that and then that's it. But if we encourage faculty to engage, we can learn from one another, and therefore we can embrace these practices that are critical to what we want to achieve.
Oh, thank you so much for bringing, one of the things that are so key for Prime, that SIP report, and to get that right, and to get that into, as you suggest, and as you say, and you've been very much part of this discussion over the past year also, how can we actually develop that into a true knowledge exchange space for the community. Thank you so much, Enase, for being here for us with the Prime board and for helping all the Prime work. Thank you.
Good reasons to join Prime are people, ideas, and support.
Number 1 is to learn from others. Number 2 is to contribute to enhance the curriculum of management and business education. Number 3 is about to diffuse it across any language, nations, and culture.
By joining Prime, we become part of a community that's committed to working together to enshrine social responsibility and sustainable business practices in our students and indeed in all the organizations we work with. Secondly, we have the opportunity to contribute to and learn from others the ways by which students can be prepared to adequately and competently address the complex environmental, social, and developmental problems that assail the world of business today. And then lastly, we become part of a community that is committed to engaging with thought leaders and researching into aspects that actually can impact the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals.
First, we do need to transform management education and create the right leaders at scale to have true impact. 2, we need the best thinking and practices from everywhere in the Prime network to do this. And 3, we need to leverage the collective esteem and trust that the academic sector is held in to drive the broader systems changes at scale.
1, you should become a part of PRME to help make this vision happen. We cannot do it without active participation from the best schools across the world. The second is that you will, all of us are doing something, innovating in our own way, but you will be able to learn from global best practice and improve your school. Your students will become members of a group of global leaders and a community of students driving best practices and sustainability across the world. And finally, you'll have the opportunity to do research across boundaries on what is sustainable management education really should look like.
So, Ranjan, that was a beautiful, transition from you, in the pre-recording, and here you are live with us very late in India, I know. Thank you so much for being there on the Prime board as a board member over the past 2 years, but also, for taking the additional time here in between meetings, of course, but also here tonight to be part of the conversation with the board, sharing a strategic vision for Prime. So please let me introduce you to Ranjan Banerjee, who is the Dean at BITSoM in India, but also a Prime board member. So Ranjan, maybe you can start by exploring a little bit here with me what actually made you, like I've asked Tima, I've asked John, and I've asked Enase, and now I'm asking you, why did you decide to spend time here with us in Prime? You are muted or very low voice. I cannot hear you. Matt, are you there to help us? Matt is saying, Ranjan, try to go to settings, audio and mic.
Hello?
Yes, there you are. Wonderful.
I just changed the mic. Is that better?
Perfect. Yes, it's loud and clear. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So, why did I join Prime? Why did I join the board? I actually, in the last 2 years, ever since you came on board, I think your leadership is a big part. I think there was confidence, collaboration, and a willingness to listen that I saw in the way you started taking the leadership that made us believe. And today I am able to really see one is that there are a number of caliber people and good minds on the board. And I'm able to see multiple times we've had conversations. And I have a lot of ideas, many of them are crazy, but I'm able to see many of those ideas and conversations we've actually implemented. So I do believe that I'm able to make a difference. I believe that I'm able to learn. And I have actually seen you practice influence without power. So the board itself, what we have achieved at Prime, is a great example of collaboration can take place. Because in a sense, every member of Prime, their primary job is not Prime, right? I mean, with you, maybe with the exception of you, everybody has a day job, but everybody gives that time, and we are able to see that time making a difference. It could be something as simple as how you collect a fee. It could be something as simple as the word you choose on a vision statement. It could be something like, okay, how do we get more engagement in the members? So the ideas are listened to. I remember having a conversation with you 3 years back where we said we must engage the students.
Yes.
We have moved to engaging the students, and you and I have had 2 or 3 conversations, but each of those conversations, I think you not only listened, you probably listened to multiple people, but we are able to see today a movement from ideas to action. And there is nothing more motivating than that. The fact that, your ideas can make a difference on a global stage in a collaborative manner, I think is very inspiring.
Oh, thank you, Ranjan, for this. I think I'll cut this bit out and send to my mother. Thank you very much for this. I also really appreciate, you challenging us in the board, you challenging us as the Prime Secretariat, and in that challenge brings us a little bit further. So what do you think is the biggest challenge we actually face now as a Prime community? And how do we sort of move on from here? What are some of the big challenges that we need to attend to in the future?
Right. So there is, I was listening to Tima very carefully. And, I spoke about this in the video saying that, what are you looking to achieve at the school level? And I'd say, let's look at 3 levels. One is we want to embed sustainability into the curriculum, not as a single course, but as something that is a consistent message across the curriculum. The second is we are looking at leaders, and people do not only follow what you say, but they follow what you do. Do you demonstrate sustainable practices in the way you run your institute? Is the management of the institute collaborative? Does it listen well? Are you setting the right examples in the way you run the institute? The third dimension, and maybe I'll close with 4. The third dimension is, can we create experiences such that management students do not just experience big business, but they also experience the social sector. They also experience the underprivileged sections of society. So that management itself acquires a more universal dimension, and students acquire values not only through curriculum, but by experience and reflection outside the curriculum. The final thing I would say on this one is that if you go and talk, and I was having this conversation with Roger Martin where this got reinforced, where, if you look at the MBA student, when they come out, is their primary filter win, lose, or win-win? 75% of the situations that you will face on a day-to-day basis are collaborative situations. Are we able today to send out students whose default filter is collaborate, or is the default filter compete? I think if we can, even if we can make this small change, that across the world in the Prime community, a student from a Prime school, when they come out of the MBF, their default filter on any situation is to look for opportunities to collaborate. Because when you look for opportunities to collaborate, you're more secure, you're more self-aware, you listen better. So I think that's a very clear kind of element of the direction that
one. Yes, I really appreciate that collaboration focus that you put on also for our students to think. And of course, it puts, you could say, responsibility on us as educators. How do we bring that collaborative spirit into the classroom? And maybe I will invite you for a final reflection about that. How do we as educators, what do we actually do to bring that into the classroom? Because a lot of our textbooks are about the opposite, competition.
So there are 3 quick answers. One is that maybe we should look at teaching more than the traditional economics. I think economics is one subject where we have not innovated. We must look at teaching more than perfect competition and, every firm being driven down to marginal cost. Is there an alternative, more integrative view of economics that can be brought into the classroom? I think is one. The second is, in the way we run our institutions, can we become less siloed? And whether I'll talk about an experiment that we tried in my past institute, which was we tried to get groups of 7 faculty from across areas to teach to each other. And then we said, can you start taking classes? For instance, let's do a blockchain class where a technology faculty teaches with a finance faculty. Can we become more integrative first in the way we run our institutions? Can people see demonstrations of collaboration? The third is measurement. There's one paper that I read a long time ago called the multitask principal agent method, which says that if there are 2 tasks, which are one which is easy to measure and one which is not easy to measure, and you incentivize the measurable task, then people don't do the non-measurable task. So whenever you focus on a single easy measure, that which is not measured gets sacrificed. Russell Ackoff had this statement. He says, a garbage heap grows, it does not develop. How do you create balanced measures between growth and development? And I think those are kind of the directions which we need to.
No, I really love your idea about the co-teaching, the sort of across disciplines, and in that co-teaching, actually learning from each other, but maybe also, as you say, importantly, role modeling for the students that collaboration can actually happen even in the classroom. So I love that. That's actually another crazy idea of yours, which I really appreciate. And thank you for bringing it onto the table here, and for engaging, for you here to engage with the community, and for the community to see that the Prime Board is not just, high up in the air above us all, but very much with us, very much challenging what we do, and of course also themselves out in the classrooms, engaging with students and with faculty. So thank you very much, Ranjan, for being here for this last conversation here today at the PRME Global Forum 2022. And now I can see in my chat here that we are about to wrap up for the PRME Global Forum 2022. We are just hitting the very, very final minutes, and some would argue that we are maybe even 2 minutes above or beyond our scheduled closing time. So please let me just say thank you to all of you, ladies, gentlemen, friends, professors, deans, students, and business NGO practitioners who have been joining us, just as not as an audience, but indeed also on our stage here. We have, across the eastern and the western parts of the Global Forum, had more than 30 sessions. We have engaged more than 100 speakers. We've had a very good, as always, a very good gender balance. And we've had 2/3 of our boards actually on our stage for you to meet them and to hear what they think and the direction that they are taking our wonderful initiative in. We've also had the launch of the PIR 2022 edition. We have also seen a lot of keynotes. We've had 5 keynotes across the Eastern and the Western Hemisphere. And there's been a lot of different sort of agendas that we have set here, and I just hear from my notes being part of the conversation over the past Eastern and Western Hemisphere. It's been a lot of talking about how we humanize business ethics, how we humanize management, how we also focus on social impact, and we know we're all engaged on that journey, how we sort of develop new innovative pedagogies. That has been very much a permeating thread, I think, in a lot of the conversations. And how we also this year, we had a panel in the Eastern Hemisphere talking about indigenous communities. And I think this is something I see in research also emerging and increasing. with a lot of interest and very interesting studies being done right now in that sphere. We've also, of course, had a lot of focus on climate change, on planetary boundaries, a discussion here as well. And then, of course, this new vocabulary that I hear every year here, more and more sort of outspoken, more and more talked about from deans, from business executives, from professors, and indeed also, of course, from students, about pausing, reflecting, compassion, empathy, mindfulness. This is a vocabulary for management schools that we need to think about how we translate that into our own practices as business school educators. So on that note, I just want to say thank you so much to all of you who have been listening, Eastern, Western Hemisphere, from around the world to the PRME Global Forum 2022. Thank you so much to the organizing committees in the Eastern and in the Western Hemisphere. We've spent a lot of time over the past half year discussing how to organize, how to focus, and how to get some action out of what is still a virtual global forum. We hope that next year we will all meet in person, and those of us who will not meet in person, we will make sure that we will have a hybrid session going on for next year. We're trying, as I said in my introductory remarks earlier on today, we're trying to organize the week in June 2023, where we will also engage with other associations who move around in the same sphere as we do and interested in working with responsible management education in order to inspire us. So we hope for some joint action over 1 week next year, 2023. Thank you so much to all of you, and thank you to my wonderful, fabulous PRME Secretariat team who have done magnificent, excellent job to make this happen. As you will know, you can imagine all the backstage that has been going on here for the past half year. Thank you so much to all of you.